Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be talking about Soviet tanks. This is my second Militech poorly explained, so here we go. This is the T-34, and that's about it. See you guys later. Seriously though, we're going to be looking at a lot of tanks. And I'm going to focus really only on tanks since we can talk about the man shredder, but if I'm being honest, tanks are the only interesting part about the war. And with the Soviets, there isn't much else to talk about. The long list of Soviet tanks used during the war is full of prototypes and dead-end designs, but the Ruskies started to narrow it down about after the Winter War because these three were the most effective. These being the T-34, 76, and 85. 76 and 85 standing for the size of gun, the KV series, and the T-60 and other light tanks. Of course, there are a metric fuck ton of more tanks used during the war, starting with the T-18 and going to the T-100. And if I'm being honest, I have no clue what the numbers stand for, and I think tank designers for the Soviets forgot too because there's so many T variants. The KV series was pulled out of favor though for the IS series having three different variants. Well, let's focus on one for now. The T-34 was one of the most widely used tanks, sprouting the astounding number of 80,000 of the death traps being made. And I don't use that word lightly. These things were featured shitty welds and a tiny compact space. I mean, even moving the turret could cause injury to the men inside. But its massive gun, the 76 mm, could pen about every German tank at the time of Operation Barbarossa, with the Germans being forced to create new tanks to combat them. It was a good tank for the job, but my god, I would not want to be in one. And the 85 variant being even better because of its very decisive factor in them winning the tank war. But you always have problem with mass-produced designs, although, uh, which it was very apparent to the Soviet commanders, but they also saw it scaring the Huns, so win lose, am I right? The Germans couldn't kill them, but it was a psychological shock as they thought they were going against Igor in a shed armed with a shovel, but they got an extremely hard to kill and heavy hitting tank. I'm not going to lie to you, though, they did take a crap ton of casualties, and it always comes down to the Germans having 10 bullets and the Soviets having 20 guys. You do the math on who's going to win. The T-60 and other light tank variants were mainly used for scouting purposes, and from all the people I know who have massive history boners for the Russian Militech say the Soviets had the best light tanks. And who knows, maybe they're right. I surely don't know. This is poorly explained for a reason, because I don't have a clue. But the light tanks also have the BT class of tanks, but nobody likes them. Light tanks proved to be very useful at the beginning of the World War II and Spanish Civil War, but the Soviets were kind of late to the party when it comes to tank design because they didn't really need them in the First World War. But with that being said, they did a pretty good job with making them as they had a fairly decent gun and could pen some tanks, but low armor, which is high speed, which is pretty much light tank's purpose. And the heavy tank story in Russia starts with the KV-1. Strong armor, strong gun. And proved to be the most powerful tank in the world at the time of the first invasions of Russia. That is, of course, if you don't count the Tsar tank. Anyway, the KV tanks had its fair share of variants, like the KV-2, which wasn't produced very much due to its lack of combat effectiveness, and for God knows what reason, the KV-85. They're like Xbox with the number order. Not much to say about the KV-85 other than it was the basis for the IS design. And the KV-1 was subject to breakdowns and couldn't be penned, so they were like, fuck it, might as well. The KV-1 was used up until the end of the war, but its diminishing numbers pretty much knocked it out of the running. This is what led up to the IS tank, but also probably because of it being better. The Iosif Stalin tank. Yes, he did name it after himself. Had thick as fuck armor and couldn't be shot by any of the German 88 guns, and had a gun capable of killing tigers. These models were pretty juicy and all around very aesthetically pleasing. Oh, am I kidding? No. You don't want to hear about tanks. You want to hear about the Mac Daddy, the creme de la creme, the Schmied of meats, Papa Stalin's organ, the BM-13 Katushka rocket artillery. The Katusha really told the Germans pew 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 because it struck fear into the heart of poor little Hans. And if you can't tell, it's probably one of my favorite pieces of tech from World War II, as it's just a truck with a rocket launcher on the back of it. Rocket artillery was very, very new tech in World War II and was just beginning to hatch like an alien sack on the back of old Uncle Jerry's truck he keeps in the barn. It was extremely inaccurate, but served a purpose that was to be very scary, and it did very well at it. And as for Artie, this gun is the only thing you really need to know about. The rest is garbage. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Share it around, and see you guys later. I had fun making this one, and hopefully I'll be able to make more in the future. Thank you.
Укропы! Это вам за сегодняшний автобус! За всехний автобус! Внимание всем машинам! Огонь!
Often I'm upset that I cannot fall in love, but I guess this avoids the stress of falling out of it. Are you tired of me yet? I'm a little sick right now, but I swear when I'm ready I will fly us out of it.